Okay, let's finish up talking about the periodic table. First, we're going to talk about how elements are classified. You need to know that they're either metals, they're nonmetals, or semiconductors. Metals are on the left-hand side of the periodic table. Nonmetals are on the right-hand side. Semiconductors actually kind of give a line down the middle of those, and we'll look at the periodic table in just a moment to see that. Now, these are the three categories. Now, properties, you need to know the properties of metals, nonmetals, and semiconductors. Metals are very good conductors of electricity and heat. That's why you have copper wiring in your cords from your TV to the outlet, because they can conduct electricity very easily. They are ductile, which means they can be easily stretched out. Malleable means they can be formed easily into other shapes that you need. And then they're shiny. Those are properties. Examples are copper and lead. Nonmetals are opposite of that. They're poor conductors of electricity and heat. That's why you have plastic, because plastic is made up of nonmetals. That's why you have a plastic coating around the copper wiring on your cords that go from your TV to the outlets, so that it doesn't conduct that electricity and heat and doesn't burn your hand as the electricity is flowing. They're not malleable, they're not ductile, they're not shiny, and they're not shiny at all, and they're brittle. They break easier. An example is carbon and sulfur. Now, semiconductors are going to be in the middle of these. Sometimes they conduct electricity, sometimes they don't. These are actually the things that are main computer components in computer chips, and other electronic devices. So tellurium, silicon, those are two examples of semiconductors. Our semiconductors actually start right over here. So our semiconductors are kind of like a line, okay, that divvies up our non-metals and our metals. So everything to the right of this line, are non-metals. And everything to the left of this line are metals. And so you need to know this. You're going to use this the rest of the semester. You need to be able to know which side are metals, which side are non-metals. And so everything from like aluminum, all of this down here are metals. Everything to the left are metals. To the right of the little line are non-metals. And we're going to color our periodic table in class so that you can see the distinction. Now, let's talk about how you classify them even further. So they start metals, non-metals, semiconductors, but you can actually classify them even further, because the ones that are in the same family have the same number of valence electrons, so we group those together. So group number 1, which is hydrogen and its column underneath it, they have one valence electron. They're called alkali metals. Group number 2 is alkaline earth metals, and they have two valence electrons. Now, groups 3 through 12, they are transition metals. They vary. The numbers of valence electrons vary, but we call that entire group, the one that dips down in the middle, transition metals. That's the name of their family. Then group number 17, they have 7 valence electrons. We call them halogens. And group 18 have 8 valence electrons, and we call them noble gases. Now remember, noble gases are going to be the happiest of all of the families because they have outermost energy level already full from the beginning. Now these are the families that we're going to talk about. There are more families, like groups 13 through 16 have certain family names, but we're just going to discuss them as other nonmetals. You'll go more in detail once you get to chemistry. Let's look at the metal families. The families include alkali metals, alkaline earth metals, and transition metals, and you need to be able to discuss and tell where these are on the periodic table. Now, alkali metals, they're group 1. That means they have one valence electron. They're typically soft and shiny. And since they have one valence electron, they're very reactive because it doesn't take long to get that one valence electron given to somebody else. So they react very easily. They are not found naturally in nature, but they're combined with other elements to form compounds. Now let's look at alkaline earth metals. Alkaline earth metals are in group 2. They are less reactive than alkali metals because they have 2 valence electrons, but they still react and they're still going to form those positive ions because they're going to give away their 2 valence electrons. Transition metals, those are groups 3 through 12. They are much less reactive than alkali metals and alkaline earth metals. They include mercury, which is the only metal that is liquid at room temperature. So this is the only metal that actually is liquid at room temperature. Every other metal is going to be a solid at room temperature. Now, the lanthanide series and the actinoid series are those at the very bottom of the transition metals. Those are they are considered transition metals, and so all of those are metals as well. Now let's talk about nonmetals. The families of nonmetals include noble gases and halogens. Now, halogens are group 17. That means they have 7 valence electrons. They readily combine to form compounds with other elements by gaining an electron. So they easily form negative ions. Remember, they have 7 on the outside. They only need 1 to be happy, so they take that one very quickly, and they react pretty quickly to do that. Now, they easily combine with metals to form salts. So like sodium chloride, that's a salt. That's our table salt that we use, and that's a metal forming with a nonmetal to form a salt. Now, let's look at the noble gas family. They're group 18. They do not react at all because they already have 8 electrons in that outer energy level, so they're happy. They don't need to react with anyone. Now, these are used in neon signs, laser light shows that maybe you've seen at Stone Mountain. Now let's talk about semiconductors. These are the ones that divide the metals from the nonmetals. They're also known as metalloids. You need to be familiar with the word semiconductor or metalloid because either one could be used on the EOCT or my test. Only 6 elements are considered to be semiconductors. And that is boron, silicon, germanium. And then we have the 4, 5, and 6 also. So go ahead and write those in. And that's arsenic, antimony, and tellurium. So get those written in your notes. These have properties of both metals and nonmetals. Okay, so that's why we call them semiconductors, because they conduct electricity and heat sometimes, and sometimes they don't. Now, hydrogen is in a class all by itself. It's up there at the top left, and we are not going to put it with any family because it does not behave like any other element. However, we would categorize it as a nonmetal, but we don't put it with an actual family. All right, we need to go ahead and summarize for this video. And so this is what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to write the word element out as an acronym, and then write a word or phrase that summarizes something we talked about today with each letter of the word element. So E would have a word or phrase that described or summarized a part of the lesson. L would have a word or phrase that would summarize or tell about a part of the lesson, and so forth. So write out the word element as an acronym and write words or phrases with each letter to represent what you learned today on the video. See you in class.